What's up, everybody? It's Warren Hampton.
And Roisha Hampton.
With Not For Real. Listen, we titled this episode 1+1 after Beyonce's iconic song.
The queen herself.
That you walked down the aisle to on our wedding.
And y'all know it would have been a Beyonce song. Don't act like you didn't know.
Of course. So when the world is at war, how does love heal us all? Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about in this episode. And so we made it 2 parts, so stay tuned.
Not for real.
For real?
Real. It's Warren Hampton.
What's up, everybody? It's Warren Hampton.
And Roisha Hampton.
We are back with Not For Real. Thank y'all for tuning in. Listen, at Not For Real, we like to use all kind of R&B and hip hop songs to title and our subject matter. And so this one is 1+1, and it's special because you walked down the aisle to our wedding on 11/11 to 1+1.
I did.
Yeah. And so that song, it means so much to us because, 1+1 equals 2, but in biblical terminology, there you go, 2 become 1. I see what you did there.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
All right. Okay. So today we want to talk about that. Like there was a lyric in that, even when we got married, during that time, October 7th, there was this war on Gaza, and that we are fighting for, activists. We are activists. We fought for people's lives, and we stand with Palestine, and we want Palestine to be free. We want people to know the real education of Israel and this Palestinian war, and why America should call for a ceasefire, but we see the total opposite. So while the world was literally at war, we had this tension that we have this great love and we're experiencing that. So we just want to say, we even in current times, since October 7th, we got married 11/11, and we are currently in this war right now of biblical proportions, Armageddon proportions, and so many lives are being lost.
Yes, and we would be remiss from me having indigenous ancestry to not mention this indigenous community, our brothers and sisters in Palestine.
Absolutely.
And the impact of colonialism and what they're experiencing right now in this genocide.
Absolutely. And so with all that, the lyric that really spoke to us mostly about this song that Beyonce sang, and mind you, just caveat of love, I couldn't wait to see her walk down the aisle. I couldn't wait to see you walk down the aisle to me in this song. But the lyric of this that I want to bring out, it says, when the world's at war, let our love heal us all. What does that mean to you? When the world's at war, not just, we talk about the world's at war, but there are also world war me's.
Yes, spiritual warfare, the war within yourself. So I think we chose this song. Well, everything about our wedding was super intentional, including every single song.
Yes.
And so 1+1, I think, just spoke to the war that you may experience within yourself of not truly loving yourself, not knowing what it means to love yourself, processing your childhood trauma, processing all the baggage that you may have come with to get to a place of self-love so that you can fully love someone else. Yeah. And so for me, 1+1, I'm like, man, I really had to do a lot of that work in me in order to get to a place to love you fully and for you to experience love that we both deserve, really. Yeah. So, what does that look like? I think I started this healing journey in me maybe 2000. Well, I would say I started with my master's of social work program. That's really, really kind of opened up the obvious wounds, but the deeper wounds,
Right.
I think were more so fleshed out with our relationship because, for one, I know that what I was experiencing, what I was dating with other men and just, man, I don't always like feeling like I'm the smart one in the room, but I know when I am. And it was consistent in those types of relationships and I felt like I couldn't allow that man to lead me because I didn't fully trust in their leadership or their ability to make decisions that are in the best interest of both of us and not just maybe one person. And so for me, I started to take off my like shero black woman cape when I met you because there were areas in me that I thought that I had already healed prior to meeting you, and it just uncovered so much more, especially the relationship that I have with men, whether that is the relationship with my absent biological father, whether that's the relationship with my mentors or what have you.
Right.
You really healed a part of me that I did not know needed healing to become whole. So that looked like you being consistent in showing up for me, you protecting me, you creating a safe space for me and my feelings, you constantly telling me that it is okay, like you can just be and that I'm enough. That was something that you said to me over and over. And as a person who achieved a lot in my life, that being enough, I never knew translated into like, you actually don't have to have all these degrees. You actually don't need to be the smartest. You don't need to be the best. You don't need to be all, but because I'm in experienced life as a Black woman, in order to survive, like those are only survivor traits and characteristics I developed to be able to be competitive in this world. So
like being Mary Jane.
oh my God, I was
I remember.
I was her and she was me. I was like, I was man, and that was a scary moment too, to like really be identifying with this TV show, being Mary Jane, and how super badass she is and was, but like also how lonely she was, how her relationship was with men was just, so yes. And then I noticed like, wow, I don't want to be 40, 50 years old, single and, alone or shuffling men in and out. So I had to do all that inner healing before I got to you. And then you actually just helped heal the pieces in me that I didn't know that I needed healing. And I remember saying that to you, that, wow, you are the first person I'm asking to trust and to lead me, guide me. So.
And what a privilege. And for you to barely know me at that time, we were just getting to know each other. But I was so impressed with your, like I said, we always talk about greatness hours and you just becoming that woman. But when I first saw you, I was like, oh, she's so mad. She's so angry. She's so hurt. And I just want to make you smile. Like that, when I met you, that's what that was. And the crazy thing was, at the time when we met, I was at war. I was in a very toxic and abusive relationship, marriage. And it was from counseling from year one. It was just back and forth, emotionally abusive, trauma bonded relationship, because we wanted to get not repeat what our parents, we went through, how we grew up with our parents, but we also, you will repeat it unless you heal it. And so we repeated it because we didn't heal it within ourselves before we came together, because of having a child out of wedlock as a young preacher, Go ahead.
I was just going to emphasize like the consciousness of, I don't want to do the same thing. You actually do the same thing.
Yes.
No, like if you don't deal with it, you literally become that. And all of the protections and safeguards that you thought were putting up ended up being, the result ended up being exactly the same.
Absolutely. And so when I was in school, not in seminary, but in ASU, and I was going through family communication, and they were talking about, backgrounds and how, family origin type stuff. And then that's when I had the epiphany, like, oh, my parents didn't come to a common ground because they never dealt with their background. So it wasn't even all this childhood trauma, epigenetic conversation like it is right now, or even therapeutic. It was just like, your upbringing was jacked up because, I mean, we're 3-4 generations removed from slavery, or being enslaved. And so all that trauma and then their trauma from their parents and trying to make it. And then we have to say, okay, this stops with me. I don't want to repeat this, but no one ever gave us the tools. So that's why we want to do this podcast, because we want to be able to say, here are some tools, here's some processes, here's how you can have a nah for real moment when, like, I'm in family communication and I'm like, wow, here's a nah for real moment. This is the problem with my parents. No wonder there's no family type camaraderie and unity. Like we were honesty. We wore some of the biggest masks growing up as PKs, and I was like, there was so much cognitive dissonance in my mind. I'm like, okay, I know we're posing for pictures, but this shit is crazy at home. Like, I was like, and you're a kid and you like, I don't know how to express it. Then you get married young and you repeat that same thing. And it's just like, how do you...
You're trying to create the image that you have it all together. That you are not a failure. That you're not...
Yes.
Yeah.
And you don't know the person that you marry. And for pause, you don't know yourself enough.
Correct.
Before you even get in a relationship, have children. And many people don't know who they are. So it starts, 1 + 1 starts with, I know me, you know you, and then we come together.
And we know we.
And we know we. I know you, you know me, we know we. And
I was just gonna share before we move too far that I had the complete opposite experience of you.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, where mom used to say, like, everybody shit stinks, and we're not in the business of covering it up, basically. Like, so we lived a life of honesty, and transparency, and left a lot of people, which I will say, because their level of emotional maturity, my cousins and my aunts and uncles, they weren't necessarily dealing with the truth in the best ways.
Yeah.
Like, they'll be all mad for like a year or whatever and not talk to you, but it's like, okay, but you still know how I felt. I still told you how I felt.
Yeah.
And so I didn't share that experience with you, with not being able to be honest and transparent with your family members and people you love.
Yeah, we didn't grow up like that. I didn't have the former relationship I had. We didn't have that. It was just lies, hypocrisy. It was the most antithetical thing to Christ growing up in a Christian home, what everybody believed. Like, we quoted scripture, we went to church, we sang the hymns, but there was no love of Christ. No, it was shame, it was division, it was strife, and that carried over into, my former marriage. And so there was a war. Before I even met you, I was like, how do I get out of this? God, this cannot be your will for me. I can't even do ministry as frustrated as I am. And then giving out so much love that you give, that you may not have in reciprocation from anyone else. You have to give that to yourself. And so in the process of meeting you, that's when my world was colliding all by itself. When I'm like, God, I have read through the Bible front and back multiple times. This cannot be your will. This bombs are going off, landmines, destruction, emotional abuse, financial, mishandling of so many things. It's so many things that this can't be God. As a man of God, that's where I was when the world was at war for me. And I wanted love to heal me. I wanted a marriage like, God, this cannot be. And I've tried therapy. I've tried these books. I've gone to seminary. I sat in class, and you keep trying to fix it. But when someone else is at war with themselves and they've never called a ceasefire on their own mental warfare, or someone else has invaded to call a ceasefire, an activist in your family, that's where all hell breaks loose in relationships, because many people don't know who they are. Many people don't deal with their mental health. Many people are not honest with themselves, and we cannot love properly until we've loved ourselves.
Correct.
And I remember just growing up in ministry, I used to hear the women in ministry say, and shout out to Robin Cornegay, she used to be one of my mentors. She said, God doesn't bring two halves together to make a whole. He brings two wholes together to make one whole.
Which is crazy, because when I write about you, I say my better whole. I don't say my better half. I always used to be like, why do people say better half? Like, you are still an individual.
Absolutely.
Separate and together,
right.
You are still an individual.
Right.
With different, and that's the other part, is people don't know how to be individuals within a relationship.
Yes.
And then they feel like they sacrifice their whole life for you. And it's like, nobody told you to do that, though. Like, you could just still have just been you and had your own goals and focused on your own issues.
Preach.
And still, but yeah, I see that a lot with relationships. And I'm like, this losing yourself concept, and that just, if it does happen, of course it can happen. I feel like that's why you're supposed to know who you are before you go into a relationship.
You do.
It brings me to part of the piece of the vows that I wrote to you, where one of my best friends, Fatima Hernandez, shout out, I was in the prior relationship that was like totally, completely toxic. And she was I first of all, I only have friends who can at least put the mirror up to me and say like, hey, you're tripping, or you're not doing well.
Right.
And Fatima was basically saying that person, like, this person is not bringing out the best in you. Yeah. And I know who you are, and the person who is for you will only bring out the best in you. And I remember sitting in her couch in her living room being like, clutching my pearls, like, how could you tell me that I'm being like a horrible human right now because I'm with this person? And I had to really evaluate, like, well, damn, bitch, you are. You know, you are not a good human right now.
Yeah.
And so I remember being very confused when she shared that sentiment and not really understanding like the complexity of it.
Yes.
But then when I meet you, and then years pass and I'm growing into this person who I'm totally destined to be by God, you know, creating safe spaces for Black women to heal, my business, my foundation, like all of these things that are coming along that are just blessing me. I am my biggest, best self when I'm with you. Yeah. And that's how I know that this is supposed to be, because I like who I am when I'm with you. I like who I am by myself.
Yes.
I love who I am by myself.
Yes.
But you compliment me in all of those ways.
Same. Thank you, baby.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. I love who I am with you, and you helped me love myself more and gave me the freedom to work on myself, to call that ceasefire in my own mind. Because, you know, like, traveling the world with you and still landmines going off in my mind. You know, the religious dogma and the shame of God hates divorce. Well, God, does he hate me being abused? Does he hate me acting like this is of him and I know it's not, and a prophet warned me 22 years ago not to do this? Like, is he not blessing this because he knows I'm in disobedience? You know what I'm saying? So it's like to wrestle with that war too, the religious war. And of course, religion has started a lot of wars, like we're in one right now. But that own cognitive dissonance and religious war and the shame.
Explain what cognitive dissonance means. Why you?
So I grew up to believe, and to stick with it, that God hates divorce. Mm-hmm. No one told me that divorce could be liberation for me from an abusive relationship as a man of God. And I think that I'm wrong for thinking that divorcing her is the best thing for me. So that's my tension and my cognitive dissonance. I'm thinking God hates this, so he's going to hate me, you know, if I do it. But I know I can't stay because I'm not going to survive, you know, financially, physically, you know, I was abused, you know, spiritually. Like, it is so much going on, and this is my cry for help. And I'm going to divorce her because my therapist said, my first therapist that I got into said that I would. My second one was like, this is no longer your responsibility. Like, I worked through this decision. I talked to multiple mentors, like, but it's still, that cognitive dissonance was personal. I had to wrestle with that. I had to settle those thoughts in my mind through therapy, through book reading, through prayer, through wise counsel, through honest conversations with you, and really not having a blueprint as from anyone that was willing to listen and understand my pain. That's why it was so hard, because everyone that I poured into, they didn't want to listen. I was the problem. I was the villain. I caused this because I'm the man, and the responsibility's on the man. And so I do want to talk about that and really get into what 1+1 looks like from a biblical standpoint, because I don't think people know, and so when we come back, we're gonna do that because it's so good. It's a precursor, but I just to y'all, what war is going on with you right now? Like, what war in your mind, in your finances, in your relationship, that silent war you don't tell anybody about? I think I want to stay on that, because I know a lot of people wrestle with silent wars, secret wars.
Excuse me. I think for what I experienced, we just concluded Attitude last weekend.
Yeah.
And from what I've gathered from that experience, that a lot of the silent wars that Black women are experiencing is worth.
Yeah.
Especially if I can think of myself prior to meeting you, I will have said, my credit score is a 750. I have X amount of degrees. I have my career. I have a 401k. I have this. I have my own place. I'm responsible. I'm this. I'm that. I'm this. Why am I still single? Why am I still having issues in this area? Why is everybody that I encounter like just not who they say they are? And how come I can't decipher that?
Discern it
even, yeah. And that just kind of cycles itself, and I think it really breaks down. Because otherwise, as Black women, like, we do have it together for the most part. And I'll say from a millennial perspective, because I know the generation before me, like, raising kids, and like, that's a whole...
My generation.
Yeah.
Why you say it like it's so ancient? Like, it's
I'm just saying the generation before me, because y'all really... I watched my cousins who are your age do this, literally have kids. And it was so ingrained in us as young kids that you are not to go out and turn 18 and have a kid. That is what you're not going to do.
Yeah.
Do anything else but that. And so our mom ingrained that in us, because we were able to see what exactly was happening, like the cycles, right? And so for me, I wanted to do everything else except settle down. And then when I thought about settling down, I was already to an age where people would be like, you should have been settled down by now. Why aren't you married, 30-year-old, what's going on with you? So that's what I will say.
Well, and whoever set those standards is a weirdo, because scientifically,
not even like
we don't even mature. Women don't mature to their mid-30s. Men don't mature to their mid-40s. Why are we having babies?
Correct.
When we're babies.
Right.
When we don't know who we are. When we don't know the career path.
Now you're just focusing on keeping these humans alive. Like, you're not even focused on...
Straight survival mode. As soon as you have a child, it's straight survival mode.
What's life even?
For 18 years. And then, oops, you did it again. Wow, let's reset the clock. I don't even know how I'm going to be alive, let alone keep these little niggas alive. But, it's like...
And for real, people don't talk about that, which we get into the next stuff. But there's a lot that goes down between a person creating a human and going through all of these physical and mental changes, and then you don't even know that person who you're having the human with.
Listen.
And then now you're experiencing all of these different changes, and you're still trying to figure out who you are, and you're still lifing.
Yeah.
Trigger.
I was so grateful for therapy right now. I was just trying to be grateful because it could have triggered me.
Okay.
But that was my story, like, because we talk about women having babies.
Yeah.
By men that they don't know. I was a man, young man, who had a baby by a woman I did not know, and ended up marrying her, and did not know her. And I remember a pastor who just got exposed a few months ago, that said some crazy stuff to me when I was trying to be honest about my divorce because I hadn't seen him in a few years. He was like, well, you knew her when you got her, like when you married her. And I was like, but I didn't. Like, I really didn't know her. Like, I thought I did, but 6 months wasn't enough. I think 3 months in, we was having sex. That was maybe 2. It wasn't enough. It was too fast. And God warned me. Like, and I'm like, you can't say stuff to people like that if you're not willing to sit down and listen to what they have gone through to get to this point in their life. So for people to see our pictures and our videos of our wedding, and we're gonna of course show you guys all that, but there's a lot. There's a lot of hills and valleys in that journey. And what I want to pick back up in the next episode is that God didn't give Adam a child before, or Adam and Eve children first. He gave him a purpose, an environment, and an assignment. Then he gave him a woman. So God works all things well, and they were fully mature. They weren't teenagers when he made them. They were adults. And then they came together and became one. So we have to ask ourselves, now for real, are we adults before we are coming together?
And exchanging energy and bodily fluids.
That's why I said, those exact words, because coming together is more than just that. It is a spiritual thing. It is an emotional, financial, physiological thing, metaphysical thing. So it's a lot deeper than the sensations that we get by eating a donut.
Yeah. Which, by the way, we have something.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're going to conclude on that.
I'm excited.
And we'll be back with 1+1 Part 2. It's not for real.